Yes, we are. All right, we're gonna say we're live now. Sorry for the delay. Uh, my name's Taylor Callais. I'm a realtor with Keller Williams Select here in Apple Valley, and you know what? I want to talk to you about today's changing home market, to you, the home seller, and navigate you through all the steps to sell in today's changing market. So this is selling your home in today's market. So we're going to go over kind of high level here, just the agenda. We've got the selling process, kind of the nuts and bolts, things that are pretty standard. Pricing, markets and trends, kind of what's going on in the market, both in the Metro County area as well as here locally. Prepping your home. A lot of people have ideas about that. A lot of people have, they think they need to kind of, make some big dramatic changes, or they don't want to make any changes at all. We'll kind of walk through what best practices are. Legal and title considerations. It is as fun as it sounds. Buying and selling simultaneously. A lot of folks, if you're, unless you're retiring, you've got some sort of, major life change in that fashion, you're also going to be buying a home. So kind of navigating that process as well. Net proceeds and costs. What are you going to take home? And then, any kind of Q&A to close here. So let's get started. So market snapshot, and that's a little bit of an eye test here, but let me go ahead and see if I can't. Let's see. Okay, so local and regional trends matter. You hear a lot of stuff going on in, nationally speaking. It's we're shifting towards a buyer's market, but things are still unaffordable. We've got all those sorts of challenges facing us. You need to kind of cut down and really get down. Real estate is a local thing. It's very specific to towns and neighborhoods and homes, and to really read into too much nationally is probably a mistake. So looking at Rosemount specifically, because that is my hometown, so I'm going to use that as the example. It's diverging from Twin Cities trends. The 13 county region saw price growth year over year during the same time. The Rosemount actually saw a little bit of a decline, and so things traditionally, or at least for the last couple of years in Rosemount, it's been a tight market. Things are maybe starting to loosen up a little bit. You're starting to see it's not a buyer's market yet, but it's certainly transitioning towards being a little bit more of a balanced market. And really, things can kind of change slowly, and then really in an instant, things can make a pretty dramatic shift. And so just kind of being aware of that, being aware of what's happening both, in the broader region as well as in, kind of more of a local, Dakota County, Rosemount area. I can get into some of the data here. Just looking, Rosemount, median sales price actually dropped. Buyers might not be willing to pay top dollar as much anymore. Days on market also, interestingly enough, kind of a divergent sort of data point there. Days in market dropped from 52 days to 41 days. So while buyers are maybe not willing to pay as much, homes are moving faster. And there's an interesting, mix, because there's a lot of new construction in Rosemount as well. So just kind of being mindful of that. Those are some of the trends there. Inventory, inventory is down a bit in Rosemount as well. And, really, a lot of data points. I'm happy to, share this information, really in more detail. I'm happy to send that, via email or message. Just reach out to me. What it means for sellers, the market's still moving. We're right around, I think, 3.3 months of inventory, give or take, which is actually a slight uptick from 3 months. But buyers are more selective, especially in Rosemount, especially, in that Dakota County area. You're going to want to price strategically. And that does not mean, what does Zillow tell me my house is worth? What is Redfin or some of these other price aggregators? They might put you in the ballpark. I'm going to get you down to really what buyers are going to pay for your house. And make no mistake, what your house sells for, that's the market decides that. I don't decide that. You don't decide that. It really is based on those are going to be attracted to your house. You got to get that pricing dialed in right. And so just keeping in mind that applies always, but it applies in the shifting market in particular. What to expect when selling for the first time. What should you do? How long does it take? How to time your sale with your next move. All, pretty common questions, and we're going to get into that here. So before you paint a closet or wall, before you start to kind of do some of that, refresh, because let's be honest, we don't live in our homes the way we want to stage our homes. You really need to consult with a professional, a realtor that is going to have your best interest in mind, that's really going to be able to give you their knowledge, their experience, and really their understanding of the marketplace to give you really that game plan and that strategy to sell your home, and sell your home in a way that gets you top dollar, that is really the least amount of hassle, and really, in the least amount of time. I think that's really those are the three objectives that we're looking at here. And so, the entire process from, first conversation, you and I are sitting down at the kitchen table, until, we close, until that, the check is cut, and, the buyer moves into your home and you're moving into your new home, you're making that transition. That's about 2 to 3 months. But that can vary depending on how ready your home is, really how hot the market is. Really looking at things right now, here's a quick breakdown. We've got 1 to 2 weeks to kind of prep and list. That's, a nice deep cleaning, maybe a few minor touch-ups. Again, we're not talking about, major renovations here. 1 to 3 weeks on the market. Again, a big driver of that timeline is going to be that price. It really is critical to get that right. And then, 30 days from offer to closing. That's, give or take. Rare occasions it could be quicker than that. Sometimes you can be out to that 40-day mark, but by and large, 30 days is kind of a good, measuring stick for that time. And then, even if you're thinking about moving this summer or fall, the time to plan is now. That's really what we're getting after. So just kind of keeping that in mind, you've got an understanding of that timeline and sort of the basics of what it takes. Let's transition into the next slide. So I know this will surprise you, but buyers and sellers see price differently. One of the hardest parts of selling your home, really, it's separating the emotion from value. Hey, you raise kids, you had Christmas parties and Thanksgivings and did all these things, and lazy days in sweatpants playing Nintendo Switch with your son. Not that I have any experience with that. And there's a lot there. I mean, it's easy for me to stand over here and say separate the emotion from your strategy from your value, but at the end of the day, by doing that, that's gonna be the way that you really are able to do this process and sell your home in a way that produces the best results. Again, it gets you the most amount of money. It is sold in the least amount of time, and it is, and it's done so in a way that you're not having to jump through, a bunch of hoops. So really kind of keeping that in mind. You think about the upgrades, you think about, the memories and all these things, but, buyers are paying for market value. My job is to show you what buyers actually are willing to pay based on recent sales, market trends, and how your home compares. Emotional pricing leads to disappointment. Strategic pricing leads to offers. We'll create a comparative market analysis. It'll give you, recent homes sold nearby, current homes on the market, which is your competition, homes that didn't sell, and why, because you'll see that often. And I think, more often than not, if you were to look and say, well, these homes are on the market, 45 days, 50 days, whatever, it's going to be price. Again, I hate to hammer that point home, but really getting that pricing dialed in is critical here. And that's where that comparative market analysis really brings that data and that information and that knowledge into a point that really kind of informs, what that list price ultimately is going to be. Move on here. Oh, one thing I want to point, you can't see the quote here because I can't zoom in the camera anymore, and this is going to sound a little harsh, but I think it's a good philosophy from my perspective to not waste your time. It's been said, it's best to turn unrealistic sellers down during the listing appointment rather than disappoint them later. And truly, I think it's just clear, and I want to impress upon people up front that I would rather have an understanding up front that maybe we can't meet on price, maybe we aren't necessarily a fit, and maybe you would be better served by another agent. I suspect that's not true. I suspect I'm going to, shoot you straight, give you that market data, give you that information, get you set up with a sound strategy to sell your home, but I'd be remiss if I didn't share that quote. All right, more charts. Let's see. All right. Technical difficulties here. Bear with me. So that I know you can see. You only get one first impression. You've heard that before. That's true in a job interview. That's true selling your home. That's true for a lot of things. And right now, I think what a lot of first-time home sellers, and that's a lot of folks, in this market currently, what they don't realize is homes that are overpriced end up sitting longer. They go through more price reductions. They often sell for less than if they had been priced correctly from the beginning. Let me say that again. They often sell for less than if they had been priced right from the beginning. The longer a home sits, the more the buyer asks, what's wrong with it? Correct pricing creates urgency, not skepticism. And there's some data points on this here in terms of, I don't know if you can see my laser pointer here, probably not, but over here you've got price reduced and average days on market, and then you've got price not reduced, average days on market. And this data is like a little dated, but by and large these trends have stayed the same. And so it's just important to kind of understand, get somebody who knows how to price right, and be on the market far less. Right. Well, and here's another great example. So why overpricing really hurts, cost more than you think. You got your initial list price here. Fair market value declines during the market shift, and I mentioned that currently we are going through a market shift where we had been really in this, some would say, unsustainable seller's market. Prices rising, interest rates rising, really just things we haven't really seen in really ever in the market. Things are in some cases starting to slowly, gradually balance out a little bit, and that's the shift that I'm talking about here. And I think it's important to come on understand the importance here, and really again kind of hammering home that point about price. You get to step 2 here, that initial list price. The seller hopes a higher initial price will draw a higher offer. We already talked about that. That's not how things are. The market dictates the price. You see that decline in market interest. It's fragile. It wanes quickly. And then you're getting down here to point 4, which, the saleable price is impacted by declining market values, staleness, and competition. You're seeing then, of course, point 5 here, price reductions. Small price reductions only chase down the market. And that is such a, it's not a place you ever want to be in, and it's almost always avoidable. So just, again, kind of keep that in mind. Point 6 here, properties sell when buyers see a very attractive price. You're starting to see the prices drop. You started off in a sort of inflated position, and no interest. You're getting down here. Now you're finally getting people to buy in. You've got, the sale here, and you get to the end, and, really the cost of overpricing is amplified. And so I think I'm beating a little bit of a pricing dead horse here, but just be aware that this is really a critical component, and this is how it plays out in real life. And it'd be a little easier to see if I could zoom in the camera, but, we're going to work with what we have. 7 maxims for pricing in today's market. understand the market. I'll read this for you. Normally I wouldn't read off the screen, but given that it's a little bit harder to see the screen, I'm going to do that for you. Understand the market. Ask your agent to show clear local data. It's critical. And ask questions. If they say, yeah, hey, listen, these are the comps and so forth and so on, and they kind of, even if it aligns with what you're looking for, ask questions. How did you get here? Why this many bedrooms and that many baths, or why this area? A good agent will be able to walk you through everything step by step and explain their process. And I think it's really an interesting conversation. I think it's fun, and I think it's putting myself in the shoes of the home seller, of the client. I think it's kind of a little fascinating little look behind the curtain. So ask questions, get that local clear data. Focus on what's currently for sale. And I say this, and there's always a little bit of a caveat, but understanding what your competition is. So you've got those comps. You need to have, they should include, obviously, homes that have recently sold in the area. That's important because that sort of sets the benchmark for what people will pay for similar homes. So you get sort of that ballpark understanding of what the market dictates. What is currently for sale is important because that's what you're going up against. It's people are looking at your house, people are looking at your other house. Maybe they're fairly similar. If you take that emotion out of that and really look at things critically, maybe they're very similar. But maybe your house is priced $25,000, $30,000, $40,000 more than that other house. That could put you in a rough spot. So, understanding what's currently for sale is critical. Compare your home objectively. See what buyers will compare you to. Again, this goes back to that comparable market analysis. Just really looking at that. Again, kind of being methodical with your agent and really just trying to understand all the inputs and the why behind what the market is doing and what other homes are going for. And then, sort of the output of this is ask for a current data-driven pricing strategy, not just a guess. I mean, listen, I'm not going to speak ill of anyone. I'm not going to, name names or be critical, but it's really important that the pricing strategy be very data informed, be very analytical, be very, again, emotionless, and just really, be it high, be it low, be it, what have you, be where it needs to be based on what the data is showing. And that includes where the market is going. And that includes not just current state, not even currently what homes are on the market, but also, again, understanding that we're in a shifting market, understanding that, the balance might be tipping a little bit more, and understanding and being forward-looking and pricing accordingly. This next one is going to be, I'm going to look in close here. I'm going to ask a favor. Be ready to sell, not just test the market. I don't think you're doing anyone any favors, yourself included, myself included. I'm a very transparent, open guy. I think if you're motivated, and believe me, I worked with, actually I'm currently working with some clients that are making a move. They're selling their home for, their sort of starter home and moving to a new build in Rosemount, actually. It's pretty fantastic. To say that they're motivated is an understatement. They have been very dialed in terms of communication, in terms of doing what they need to do and getting kind of their literal and metaphorical house in order to sell. And it served them well, it served me well. We are moving along smoothly, things are going well, they're motivated, that goes a long way. I'm going to bring up pricing again. Price strategically, not emotionally. You're going to attract offers more quickly. Have a clear plan. And that is the job of your agent. Obviously done in collaboration with you, but have a clear plan and agree on adjustments if needed. And I'm going to kind of share something that I've been practicing when it comes to adjustments, aka price decreases, aka price adjustments. Because guess what? Even if you think you have things dialed in, weird things can happen. The shift can speed up. Again, I'm not going to say that pricing adjustments have never happened. I'm going to tell you up front, I apply what's called a 10-10-0 rule. So house goes on the market. If in the first 10 days we have no showings, we talk about a price reduction. Conversely, house goes on the market, in 10 days we have 10 showings, no offers, price reduction. And so I'm up front when I'm speaking with the homeowner before we've begun listing the house. That's sort of our strategic fallback plan. Should the pricing need to be adjusted? Again, data-driven, pricing and being informed and understanding the market. There's still outliers and anomalies and things that you're going to need to make that adjustment. Life happens. Buyers are human beings too, and so just having that plan in place is critical. It's best. This is going to be another quote here. It's best to turn unrealistic sellers down during the listing appointment rather than disappoint them later. I totally agree. Again, when we meet, it's about understand. It's not only me explaining myself and what I can do for you and how I can serve you and benefit you and how we can work together. We're testing each other out. It's not always going to be a fit, and that's okay. I would rather have all the cards on the table and maybe we walk away. Really doesn't ever happen, but again, in the interest of transparency, in the interest of not wasting time, that is something that I kind of like to kind of keep in the back of my mind and just be very upfront about. All right, we're moving along. Curb appeal. So again, wishing I could, you could see this a little bit better. Really, here's what we're looking at, and I'll get, again, maybe this will be, no, it's not going to show up all that well. Such is life. So from curb appeal to the closing deal, you've got your internet listing page, which we're just going to call the MLS, the multiple listing service. That's the central hub for homes that are for sale. And you've got promotional activities. And you see these two things sort of feeding into this funnel here. Really what we're talking about here is when sellers ask me, what do we we need to get, when we know we need to get the home ready, what do we do? What does that process look like? This is really just kind of a very simple way, and again, because it's a little bit tough to read here, I'm going to go ahead and just kind of read this for you. So, first and foremost, getting your home ready for sale. What's the first thing you take care of? Believe it or not, it's out front. It's the curb appeal. It's the lawn. It's the bushes. Maybe touching up paint outside if that's of a particular need. Just kind of general upkeep there. Usually not overly expensive. We're not asking you to put in brand new shrubbery or anything like that. It's really just about making sure it's clean, well maintained. Very well maintained is what I would say. Entryway, that would be the next priority there. Just kind of clean. You're going to see kind of a theme here throughout the entire thing, and really what we're looking at is, it's what I call blank slate. So it's not so much that you have to kind of overdo things and add and so forth, but it really is making your home and having your home in a way that allows a buyer to easily see themselves in it. Picture that. They can see the Christmas tree in the corner. They can see where the kids' room is. They can see, where that, where the wet bar is going to be, whatever that happens to be. And it's tough to do when things aren't clean or things are cluttered or, I'll tell you, if I could show you a picture of the inside of my house right now, I've got family pictures on this big wall that, you could say it's a split level home. You walk right up the stairs and it's a ton of pictures of my family. If I was selling my house, I'd take those down tomorrow. Nobody wants to see that. And again, this comes from taking the emotion out of it, really just kind of understanding that this is a process, this is a transaction, and this is something that if you take that out of there will definitely benefit your home and benefit the process. So we've got curb appeal, we've got the entryway, the kitchen. Again, I'm not necessarily telling people that they need to replace appliances or, if they don't work, yes, functional appliances are important. But, I don't think we're looking for like a full remodel here. It's really just making sure that it is clean, it is functional, it is well maintained. Then you're going down, again, kind of the same principles apply here to the master bedroom and bath, the living areas, other bedrooms, and then the backyard. Funny enough, the front of the house, very important, the backyard, not as important. And that's just kind of, really the basic principles there. So just understanding this, again, for anybody that wants to see this, shoot me an email, shoot me a message, and I'd be happy to send that out to you. I like gifts. What can I tell you? So we've got something here. It's the 2P, 2F formula for staging success. And this kind of takes what I just talked about and breaks it down into a little bit more of a, goes down a level in detail here. And so 2P, 2F, plantings, front yard and curb appeal. We kind of went over that. Paint, neutralize, brighten, refresh the home. Again, we're not knocking down walls, we're not doing it, but, just neutralize. I think, again, clean slate. Pictures, artwork that sells the lifestyle. So this is something that not every home I think needs this, but I think depending on the price point, depending on the, where the home is and sort of, what we're looking at from that perspective, artwork might be something that we talk about. Maybe we meet with a stager. We get a little bit more of a professional consultation going there. Fixtures, lighting, cabinet pulls, faucets, they just have to work and they have to look good. It does not have to be, high-end fixtures and so forth, but they can't be broken, they can't be, worn and so forth. So just, and we can walk through that, at the point in time when that makes sense. Furnishings, declutter, update, maybe. Again, if I were to choose between sort of declutter and update, I would say declutter, and remove the excess. And listen, I'm going to tell you right now, there's no judgment in this process. There's no judgment in this process. Nobody lives in their home the way they stage their home. I can tell you right now, we've done a ton of spring cleaning, we've done a ton of decluttering. If we were to want to list our home, my wife and I and our family, we got work to do. And so it's a process, but understanding this up front and, again, working with an agent who can provide this sort of expertise and this sort of advice and guide you through this, it's going to make that a whole heck of a lot easier. All right. So we're going to dive into paperwork here, and I would say I promise this is going to be interesting, but I think, it's just, for me, it's really important to be very upfront and kind of walk through, as hypothetically, if you're working with me, what's all the paperwork? What am I signing? What am I looking at here? Getting into inspections and the title company, kind of more into the minutia and kind of quasi-legal side of things here. So let's get into required paperwork. So, they're standard forms. We'll review them and sign them together, but they serve an important role, each one of them, and I'll go through them now. So agency disclosure. Agency disclosure. This form explains the different types of relationships in real estate. Signing it doesn't mean you're locked in. It's not actually a contract. It's an acknowledgement. It just confirms that we've had a conversation about representation. Then we get into the affiliated business disclosure. We work with people. We work with lenders. We work with title companies. This lets you know that Keller Williams, in this case, has relationships with certain service providers, lenders, title companies. You're never required to use them, but we do need to disclose these connections. Now, here's what I'll tell you, cheap, easy plug right now. We got a killer title company. We've got a killer, lender. a lot of great folks under one roof. So just kind of keeping that in mind. Then we've got the listing contract. This is our actual agreement. This is our binding agreement between myself, my broker. I'm representing the broker, and then obviously you all as the home sellers. It outlines list price, our marketing plan, commission details, and it gives me the exclusive right to market your home during the listing period. We've got the seller property disclosure. So this is it's very detailed. There's a lot of check boxes, a lot of information that needs to be disclosed here. But this is really just you going through your home and saying, okay, what's functional, what's not functional, was there a leak at one point, was there chipped paint, anything pertaining to the condition of the home. That disclosure is going to it's going to be captured in that document. And here's what I tell people. Here's what every agent should be telling people: fill it out to the best of your knowledge. Just be honest, be transparent, and fill it out to the best of your knowledge. Don't lose sleep over it. Just kind of go through it, and then that will have that piece squared away. Then we get into, and this is I want to be pretty clear here because we've talked about list price. And obviously then with list price comes what the home actually sells for. What I think is equally as important, but maybe not discussed as much, is the estimate of proceeds. So this sheet is going to kind of go, it's going to be very line item in terms of, what the list price, and hypothetically, making the assumption that list price is also what the home is going to sell for, what the list price is, and then sort of all the financial obligations and charges and things that kind of go against that. So what is your mortgage balance, the various fees with the title company and so forth. And it's, at the end of the day, it's a snapshot of what you'll walk away with. And again, it is an estimate of proceeds, keep that in mind, but it does give you a good sort of benchmark of what you'll walk away with. And you're going to see a couple iterations of this. You'll see one at the very beginning, and then obviously you'll see something very similar as we're getting to the closing table, and that really is that's going to spell out that final amount. Now I'm going to skip some of this here, I think. So that covers the basics of paperwork. There's some other kind of back-end stuff that isn't as important, but I'm going to get into inspection and negotiations. So inspections are often where, things can be a bit tense, but with the right preparation, they don't have to fall apart. Most buyers will hire a licensed inspector, and I tell my buyer clients, I advise them to hire an inspector. I think it's just good sound practice, even for newer homes. The inspector's job is to flag everything, big or small, cracked foundation, missing outlet cover. My job is to help you prepare ahead of time so there are fewer surprises, and to help frame inspection results in a way that can keep buyers calm and focused on what really matters. Again, it's all about transparency. It's all about sort of anticipating what's going to happen, understanding that, and making things as smooth as possible. If repairs are requested, we'll review them together and decide the best response, whether it's a quick fix, a repair credit, a price adjustment. I'll walk you through the negotiation, so we can keep things moving forward. Title company, while we're finalizing terms and preparing to close, the title company is working behind the scenes to make sure that everything is legally sound. They've done a full title search to confirm the property has no unpaid taxes, surprise liens, ownership issues. That's what's called having a clear title. Normally something like this, I would have my guy Randy with Title Fusion in here, kind of maybe going a little bit more in depth. Randy is a very busy man, and so I'm going to kind of cover things from a high level here, but that's really kind of title, to begin with. They also prepare the settlement statement. So I mentioned the seller's net sheet. the settlement statement is similar to that. So it outlines every dollar. So from commission, not only mine, but the buyer's agent, taxes, mortgage payoff, proceeds, just so you're not caught off guard at closing. And they handle the logistics, signing documents, wiring funds, recording the transaction with the county, so the buyer officially becomes the new owner. The title company, and a good title company is critical, for the entire process. What if you sell before you find your next home? Normally I would have my lender guy, actually Tom. Tom wasn't able to make it here. But there's things like contingencies, there's things, bridge loans, and certain things that really I think can be vehicles to make it easier. Again, maybe a little bit of a tangent here, but what I tell my clients up front, and I preface this by saying it is not an insult, but I tell them, I say, you're not special. And they kind of, what do you mean? Whatever happens in this process at any point has happened in the past. Things can change, markets can shift. We have to be ready for that. There are, the word unprecedented is kind of worn out its impact, but things are going to happen, and it's just my job to prepare you to address things, to pivot, to kind of keep things forward, to move you ahead to your dream of selling your home and on to the next phase of life. Let's kind of get into a little bit of the detail here. So, you don't want to sell your home only to feel rushed to the next one or not have a place to go, the double mortgage or, not having a home. There's contingent offers. We accept an offer on your home, but, make the sale contingent on securing the next one. It's fairly common. There are rent-back agreements, which are less common. And what I would say is, I would connect you with our lending company to kind of walk through the specifics there. Extended closing timelines, rent back, some of these other options are certainly on the table here. More often than not, again, I'll use the example right now, the clients I'm currently working with. It's just a matter of finding, potentially temporary housing, particularly if it's something like a new build where, your home might sell, but your new home is not going to be ready until, January 10th, which, for current, that's about 6 months. It is a matter of finding temporary housing, and I'm certainly happy to assist with that. There are a lot of resources internally that might not be available to the consumer that I can bring to the table, but that's kind of what we're looking at here. Now I'm gonna try and make this work here. I'm gonna see. Actually, I don't know if I can do that. We were having some technical issues later. It's a shame because Tom recorded an excellent video that kind of walks through things. I think we'll skip that for now. I apologize for not being able to cover this, but again, maybe what I would say here is, if you're getting to the point where you are looking to sell, and you're also then going to be looking to buy, Tom is an excellent resource. No pressure. Just I think he's got 20, 30 years experience in the industry. Great guy. Would love to connect you with him, and he can kind of talk you through the particulars of the situation and really leave you in a place that's more comfortable and more informed. All right, well, that was not supposed to be the end of my presentation, but here we are. So you folks have been great. What I would say is, be in touch, work with an agent that knows, and we'll see you at the closing table.